Wow, thank you so much. Thank you. Oh wow, this is great. This is a better reception than my seventh graders would greet me every single morning in the Chicago Public Schools. So thank you so much for being here, and congratulations to all of you for your commitment to justice. What an incredible honor to be at one of the most esteemed institutions, an historic education institution here at the Roosevelt University. And today's discussion, I'm really looking forward to it. I thank you for the job offer. I won't take an unnecessarily political petty dig. I will say this though, I want to at least get reelected before I take on a role as a professor. Okay, yeah, I know. You know, as one of the first universities to integrate in this city with an incredible social justice mission, that foundation is clearly sustainable. And if it were not for that foundation, this panel would not exist. Though I just want to offer up some advice to one of my brothers in the struggle. I looked at the headshots of all the panelists, and Alex Hahn, we got to do something about his headshot. So let's, I mean, I know some of y'all are getting used to a brother having on a suit and 2 haircuts a week, but you knew I was coming. Yeah, I see. You're stepping it up. But Professor Stephanie Farmer, of course, my friend Amisha Patel, and I've already acknowledged Alex Hahn and Bonetta Mansfield. We had a chance to meet a few years ago during the presidential election. At that time, it was Senator Sanders and Warren running at the time, and of course, Richard Wallace, all of you for participating in today's conversation. I really want to acknowledge and lift up the students. The Mansfield Institute is really about making sure that social movements remain and stay alive. And we often talk about how young people are our future, and I will not break out in song, but you know, it's important that we lift up the fact that the future is today. And the work that you all are doing and your commitment to justice as young people, know that the pathway ahead requires your participation today. And so the power to affect change and make an impact in all of our communities right now, we have to prove that the work that we are delivering can outlive us, just like our ancestors have done. And whatever desires that you have, whatever drives you or moves you, whether you want to combat climate change or eradicate poverty, build real humanitarian rights across the globe, to build safer communities, whatever your mission is, I'm confident that your journey is just getting started, and the future of Chicago is better because of this institution. You know, the task will feel daunting at times, and it will feel great and even overwhelming. But I'm a living testament of what's possible through the power of people and unity. And I speak from experience, having overcome tremendous obstacles to become the 57th mayor of the greatest freaking city in the world, the city of Chicago. Last October, when I announced I was polling at 2.2%, boy, did they underestimate the power of people. And so, to build a campaign of the hopes and aspirations of people, that's what movements are about. And so I've learned some lessons, of course, in my career as an organizer, as a teacher, as a Cook County Commissioner, bringing people together. So we organized Chicago to knock on doors, to make phone calls, and to most importantly, to vote. My campaign was the reflection of a social movement that brought together all races, genders, generations, and communities working towards a common goal. And this movement was spearheaded by generations of Chicagoans who've always wanted Chicago to be better than what they inherited. And so we amplified the voices of the most marginalized people. And we established what real solidarity looks like. And that this campaign was driven not just by our hopes and aspirations, but by real people with real experiences, and particularly our young people. 27,000 new voters in April voted in this election, all under the age of 34. I won by 26,532 votes. So when the right-wing extremists get upset about my election, I just say, talk to the young people. They're responsible for it. But we won our campaign building on a progressive coalition determined to destroy and to upset the status quo. And it was the energy and the aspirations of this generation that helped bring into fruition what ultimately has been proven to be an historic moment for the city of Chicago. The work continues, though. I laid out a very ambitious agenda that ultimately is building us towards a better, stronger, and a safer Chicago. Now, some people believe that my agenda is too audacious and too bold because we dare to invest in people. Imagine how wicked you have to be to believe that investing in people is too bold. And whether we're investing in jobs, economic opportunities, accessible health care that includes mental health care, quality education, affordable housing, community development, climate justice, these are all the points of which we are centering our movement around. And on top of all of this, we are bringing the city together in a way that will ultimately give us the power and the ability to have a real shared humanitarian approach towards all of the crises that we inherited and the ones, of course, that are around the corner. And whether you are seeking asylum or whether you are seeking justice, now 3 generations from those who have been here for some time, that I'm confident that there's more than enough for everyone. And yes, it's a lot of work, don't get me wrong. My schedule is indicative of all that work. But there's nothing we can't accomplish if we stick together. And so as we continue to build this multiracial, multi-generational, interfaith movement, know that co-governance and collaboration is at the center of this work, that there's real shared responsibility for all of us. And so the leaders that are in this room, the organizers that are in this room, those that are following the footsteps of Mayor Harold Washington or Marion Stamps or Chairman Fred, or President Karen Lewis, or Reverend Jesse Jackson. These are organizers that made today possible. What will the next 100 years look like? The next group of students that come through this institution, will they look back at this moment and recognize the power that we built together to set them up for the fights that they will inevitably have? And so I'm confident, though, the coalition building that has brought us together in my campaign as mayor will continue to ensure that families, businesses, and individuals, all who love this city, can thrive in this city. And as we discover today how we continue to build our power, I want to stress the power that lies within our communities. Those who have been harmed by policies are the best people positioned to transform policies to bring real support and transformation to those communities. And so in closing, the movement must continue to educate and to spread awareness about our cause, to strengthen the movement by forging alliances with other groups and individuals. We have to continue to mobilize and rally and march and build organizing through the grassroots efforts, and to be strategic about laying out a real clear vision of our goals and making sure that our actionable steps lead towards achieving real progress. This is how we continue to build power. And with this power, we can actually affect policy. With this power, we can pass treatment, not trauma. Did that. With this power, we can bring Chicago home. Did that. With this power, we can make sure that paid time off becomes a reality. Did that. With this power, we can eliminate sub-minimum wage. Did that. With this power, we can make sure that we hire more young people. Did that. With this power, we can build up a coalition to bring real restoration and reparations to people who have been harmed, particularly black folks. Did that. With this power, we can pass a $16.77 billion budget invested in people without raising your property taxes. With this power. Did that. Thank you.
I was like, I forgot I'm supposed to talk. That was so good. So we've got a set of questions from us to the mayor. We're going to start with Bonetta and come down to me to basically build off of a lot of what you spoke about just now to us. I'm going to turn it over to Bonetta to kick us off.
Hello.
Good morning.
As mayor, what do you see as your role in building coalition? What has been the biggest challenge, and where do you see the biggest successes? And I think you just, your shoulder must be sore.
Well, thank you for that question. Look, the unique position that I'm in today is that I get to convene people of all walks of life. As you all know, in the city of Chicago, we are not short on political theory or thought or aspirations. And I think where I see that there's tremendous opportunity. This budget, though, we passed our first budget, which means I have 23 more budgets to pass. Let that sink in a little bit. Good Kids, Mad City, and the Civic Committee both supported this budget. Now, if you know anything about those particular political positions of these two institutions, it is safe to say that both of these institutions have very different paths in which they are calling for equity and justice. You can make the argument that one is more focused on equity and justice. And so to be able to convene people of all walks of life, and as well as from various industries, that's the opportunity that I have to build coalitions. I mean, as far as where there are challenges, is that, all right, so I'm going to admit something today. I'm a big HGTV person. I do. Even when you're 47, you just accept the fact that you're going to turn into your father any day now, right? And so I don't know if you all watch. This is a very shameless plug for Property Brothers, but but the challenge is it's like Chicago is this beautiful home with a pretty nice kitchen and a pretty decent bathroom, but in order to make it work for 21st century, you might have to knock some walls down and excavate a little bit. And once you knock those walls down, you see behind those walls where there's been mold and challenges and damage, where you see toxicity. Now, the unfortunate thing about being mayor of the city of Chicago is that you don't get a commercial break like the Property Brothers. And so as we continue to dig up and tear down some of these structures, the load bearing, those dynamics stay in place, but as we work around the entire city of Chicago, we're gonna uncover what neglect looks like. And that's gonna take some work. One fine point on that. As I've assessed all of the closed schools that 2 administrations ago did, some of those schools, in order to get them operational again, will cost the city anywhere from $12 to $15 million. That's how much damage has been left right in the middle of neighborhoods because of failed policies. These are our challenges now. And so I feel good, knowing that there are experts around us to help us do this work, but just understand that the work is going to be substantial. It's going to require all of us to make sure that we build a house that works for everyone and that it's affordable. See how I did that?
Hello, Mayor. Richard Wallace, founder of Equity and Transformation, EAT. And we organize in 3 communities: Austin, Inglewood, West Garfield Park, majority black communities. And when we knock doors, we don't have many folks that identify as progressives, right? And so what does a progressive administration mean for black folks in black communities?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I appreciate, Bennett and I had this conversation during the Elizabeth Warren campaign, and what I've expressed to people, that with all due respect to Senator Sanders and Senator Warren, healthcare for all, that was an idea that was put forth by the Black Panther Party. Before, the government was committed to feeding children before they started school, that was an effort led by Chairman Fred and the Black Panther Party. When we talk about affordability, and particularly around housing, when Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. came to Chicago, he experienced resistance like he had never experienced before. And what he was getting at is not that racism took on a slightly different form in Chicago, it's that it was in your face. Typically, like in the South, you had, your sheriffs and sort of your political players who were very clear of carrying out white supremacy. In Chicago, it's like the dude next door, right? So like you could walk down the street and you wouldn't have to necessarily duck from law enforcement. You would literally have to duck from people who lived on the block who didn't want to see you there. And so Dr. King made it very clear, if we can figure out housing in Chicago and everything related to justice, and particularly when it comes to liberation for black people, we could do it anywhere in the world. Those are his words, right? And so when we talk about progressive politics, you can't talk about progressive politics without talking about black liberation. And for me, that is progress. W.E.B. Du Bois said that public education at the expense of the state, after all, is a Negro idea. So when we talk about public accommodations, the last point, after the Civil War, there were 5 dynamics that descendants of slaves wanted the government to respond to: housing, healthcare, education, jobs, transportation. Now, in the 21st century, we would respectfully add climate. I would add climate justice, food equity, right? And so all of the progress that has been made in this country has been centered around the question that has been asked from the beginning of the inception of this so-called experiment of these United States: what to do with the Negro? As we answer that question, we are ultimately building a more progressive, liberated state of existence. It doesn't happen without the story of descendants of slaves. And so to be in the embodiment of that history, to get elected on the day in which Dr. King was assassinated, I believe that our ancestors and the earth is speaking to the city of Chicago, ultimately speaking to the world, that progressive politics is centered around black liberation.
And that was a really good lead-in to my question, Mr. Mayor. And I'm not gonna. Okay, we'll talk later.
You can take some shots at me.
I'm
Go ahead.
I'm not doing it right now.
You got a haircut. I got a haircut. It's all different now, Alex. I get it.
I'm gonna get my shoe shine next. So there's been obviously a long arc of struggle for freedom in Chicago, and Chicago has produced, from my perspective, and I think yours too, an outsized share of black leaders of multiracial coalitions. Examples like Fred Hampton, Harold Washington, Jesse Jackson, your mentor Karen Lewis, all of them led groundbreaking political movements that were really attempting to contest for power in a multiracial way. How do you situate yourself in that lineage of black leadership?
Wow. Yeah, so when I was up here, dusting my, shoulders off, I wasn't literally trying to imbibe, the incredible history that you just laid out, and I'm very humbled by the question because, you don't wake up as an organizer thinking one day that you're going to be a part of a book study. What I will say, though, to that point, I'll try to answer this as humbly as I possibly can. The other day ago, we lit up the city on the Magnificent Mile, and there were just hundreds, if not thousands, of people lined up. And as we were walking in the parade, along the route, there were a group of students, probably between the ages of first and third grade. And as I was walking, this group of children began to scream and point at me and say, that's Mayor Johnson, we're studying about you in school. and I thought for a second, I really hope that chapter 2 is better. But I guess what I'm saying is that I do recognize that for the names that you just mentioned, that there is a generation that is further removed from that era. And they're going to be looking for their modern day examples. And so what I believe it's incumbent upon us is to demonstrate how those leaders made sure that the young people who were pointing at me played a part in their own liberation. And that, you know, I'm grateful that I don't have to save anyone. That's not my responsibility. I don't have that burden. What we do have to do is to make sure that those who have been marginalized see themselves in this collective struggle and know that the strength that those leaders provided, that I have to do that as well. That, you know, when the days get difficult and the pressure mounts, and as the mayor of the city of Chicago, it's the only office where you are literally blamed for everything. And that's what I do love about Chicago. Like, if the gas prices are too high, if it snows, there's traffic, it's like, come on, mayor, man, I voted for you. Why is it snowing, right? But regardless of how the pressure comes, those young people, much like what I saw in Reverend Jackson and Karen Lewis, they were human. It was tough, but it didn't stop Karen Lewis from calling out the mayor at that time. It didn't stop Reverend Jackson for calling out an entire political party. It didn't stop Chairman Fred for beating back against the institutional dynamics that were squeezing the life out of people. And these individuals had life-threatening attachment constantly. So it's making sure that they see themselves and that we hold the line on not just being inspirational, but being honest about the power structure in which we're taking on, that this work, it ain't cute. It's hard and it's real. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mayor Johnson.
Andrea.
And we have sat together in a lot of coalition meetings, fought for an elected representative school board, and you coming from movement to becoming the mayor has meant that you have gone from organizing against targets to becoming a target. Fun. I want to know, like, what has been your experience becoming a target as mayor? And what do you want people to understand about the forces, the tensions, and also the contradictions that you have to navigate?
Yes, that's a good question. And, you know, sometimes when I see the interactions, I hate that I'm going to admit this. Sometimes when I see the interaction and the tension at city council, and I'm on the dais, you know what I'm really thinking? When I was organizing, we did it like this. Y'all not even doing it right. You know, to be in a building where, I mean, there's documentation. I think there's a picture with you and I together. I think Alex, where we're literally blocking the elevators, preventing people from getting to the 5th floor, and we're taking arrests in the very building in which now I'm managing. And I just want to lift that up because I don't want anyone to think that somehow I'm mayor of Chicago because we knocked some doors and we gave some speeches and we raised some money. I'm mayor of Chicago because there was real struggle and tension even within the movement to get to a point where we were able to push back against the power structure. And so when I think about myself as a target, and I say this with all due respect, To some, I might be. As far as I'm concerned, there's still really a couple of major targets here. The question for me is, how am I positioned alongside of a target or targets that now have to come to me as the representative of the city of Chicago? There are still a number of people who are going to work hard to keep, or institutions are going to work hard to keep us from bringing Chicago home. There are still going to be individuals who are going to push back against our message and movement to invest in people and challenging those with means to actually pay their fair share. And so what I do appreciate, though, is that, I'll say it like this, that even when I am the center of people's attention, as my wife reminded me over Thanksgiving dinner, she says, you know, people have political discussions over Thanksgiving dinner. I'm like, yeah. She's like, they're gonna be talking about you, dude. She's like, on Thanksgiving, you're gonna ruin people's dinner. That I need the movement to continue to not just relate to me as a part of the movement, but to challenge me, to push me, because it's the strength and it's the fuel that I'm gonna need to be able to carry out our agenda. I'll close with this. I've been married for 25 plus years. My wife and I have had some disagreements along the way. My main goal, even during a disagreement, is to make sure that my wife is still talking to me, though. I don't know if you all have been in a relationship, but if your partner stops talking, you in trouble. So my thing is, as long as the movement is still yelling, we still okay. That's a healthy marriage.
Well, that's a great lead into my question, which is, you know, we do pin everything on our leaders, right? The one person that's gonna fix it all, do it yesterday. You were supposed to do it before you became mayor. I remember some of the articles. But what do you need us, right? What do you need from us to do the work that you need to do, that we want to all do? And where do you need the larger movement to make that collective work possible? Because I think there's an idea of, like, we elected the most progressive I think the most progressive mayor in history of any major U.S. city, I think, is you. That's a lot of pressure. And it's not how power works, right? I mean, I think anyway, so it is all of us that needs to be in motion, to the point of what you just spoke about, that you need folks to not just relate to you, but also push you. But say more about, what do you need from people, it's a collective project, right? And we often get confused by it.
That's a great question. In fact, this is a question that movement has always struggled with. It's just a unique position now because that struggle has led to one of your own occupying the 5th floor and running one of the largest economies in the world. So there are probably at least 3 things. I guess as a teacher, I have to offer up at least 3 assignments. I think the one is what I do appreciate about this iteration of our movement, that we really took a lot of pride in studying the history of movement in Chicago and developing a political consciousness that provides the discipline that's needed to understand what power is and how to relate to it. And that could be a little cumbersome, and it could be a little academic, but not to get too lost into that. But when I think about United Working Families, the UWF, after Reverend Jackson ran for president, there was a similar movement. It was called the New Party. I don't know if there are folks in this room that remember that. And, Beto O'Rourke, who ran for governor in Texas, his father was a part of this. Senator Sanders was a part of this. What most people don't talk about is in 1992, Reverend Jackson was the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party. I mean, the game had changed, right? And of course, what happened after that? Sort of an unknown governor goes to the Arsenio Hall show, and it just sort of takes off from there. I'm lifting that up is because these social movements that have led into political power, they're not new. So it's important, it's incumbent upon the movement to study these political movements so that we can learn lessons from, what happened, whether it was in the 80s or even before then. The second dynamic is, and I think this is what our brother was getting at, building political power in neighborhoods who may not identify as progressive, but understand what liberation and justice needs to look like. And so it's going to be incumbent upon the movement not to just to gain sort of a political consciousness and an awareness, to have some level of sophistication of how you attack or deal with a particular matter. You got to go into the neighborhoods where you are most likeliest to gain the most support. If you look at every ballot initiative that's been progressive, let's take the fair tax, for instance. Black Chicago voted in favor of that overwhelmingly. When you ask about many of these progressive causes and you talk to black folks, especially a black woman, I mean, these are individuals who are natural allies that have to be engaged. Then I think the third and final thing is try to have a little bit of fun, y'all. We won. Let's try to have some fun. And what I mean by that is we have to celebrate our victories and our wins along the way. Even if we take a blow. Someone asked me, and I'll close with this, what is it like, running the city of Chicago? In some instances, it feels like a boxer where you get, 3 minutes? You're battling back and forth. You take a couple of blows, you land a couple of punches, you go in the corner, someone rubs some things in your face, you spit your mouthpiece out, and they say, ding, 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 get back in there and fight again. Like that's just the daily routine. And so having an opportunity to gain political consciousness, to organize in communities, where we have been negligent or reluctant, and then to enjoy one another. There's enough pressure from those who oppose us. We have to alleviate some of the tension and the breakdown that happens within our movement. And the way you do that is by celebrating one another. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor. He needs to go.